Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 188, cover dated December 1984. So the cover here by John Romita Jr. and Dan Green, and it features, as it turns out, because there's no caption here to make sense of it, but this is Rachel Summers here using her Cybolts on the X-Men. So I normally like the use of magenta on a cover, but this one makes it unclear. So you really need to study what's going on here to see that we have a kind of negative of the art here in all the parts of it that are magenta. So we've got Nightcrawler, Storm, Rogue, and the Professor himself here, and Colossus. So I don't know about this particular cover. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Not one of my favorites. So let's open this one up to the splash page, which is a good splash page. And the title of the story here is Legacy of the Lost. And this picks up from the end of the previous issue where the X-Men thought they defeated the Dire Wraiths, but they were attacked by a new threat, these shadow beings. So the creative team here is Chris Claremont writer, John Romita Jr. and Dan Green artists. What that means is that John Romita Jr. is providing breakdowns and Dan Green finished inks. Glynis Wine colorist and Tom Orzechowski letterer. So we get a little catch up there on what happened in the previous issue, but I really like this image of this shadow being here with its demonic grin attacking Storm, Colossus, Rogue and Forge. And Forge there realizes that in thought that their weapons, their fists, have no effect on these creatures. They don't seem to possess any physical substance. So he asks Storm to take radical action, use her blaster to blast away his bionic leg, which frees him up to, and this is a bit of a comical panel, hop on one leg all the way down to a lower level of his Eagle Plaza skyscraper. And he's thinking about how he might be able to defeat these beings. He thinks here they didn't affect me as much as the others because of my metal prosthesis. Don't know how long I have before the process becomes irreversible. That is the creatures turning the X-Men they're in contact with into themselves. However, upstairs, at the very apex of Forge's penthouse complex, in the center of a sacred ring, we've got Naze, or at least the person who appears to be Naze. And at the end of the previous issue, he was getting ready to cast a spell. And he addresses the Great One, the Great Spirit, perhaps. I come in humble supplication, aid my people in the hour of our greatest peril. In exchange, we offer the world and all on it, to do with as you will. And then something goes wrong as far as he was expecting, and this being appears to him and speaks, "Foolish mortal, you ask for what I do not give, and offer that which I already possess. Your form is well known to me, Naze, shaman of the Cheyenne. We have met and fought before, yet your soul I see is changed. It is alien." So this is our confirmation that something did happen to Naze in the previous issue, that he was taken over by a Dire Wraith. And this being says, "No matter now, both are mine, body and soul." And it will turn out that Naze was possessed here by the adversary. That will all become clear about 2.5 years later in the publishing history of the title. Then the scene switches to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and there is this snowstorm raging across Texas, and we get a little note here explaining that it has to do with the opening of the Casket of Ancient Winters in recent issues of Thor. That's Thor 348 and 49, written and drawn by Walter Simonson. And one of the stranded TWA 747s, jumbo jets, look who teleports down, except for Nightcrawler with his pilot's hat, grabs his girlfriend Amanda Sefton right in front of the civilians, and teleports up to the modified SR-71 that the X-Men use as their Blackbird jet. Amanda here is aghast that he pulled a stunt like that in front of all those people. How's she going to explain it? But Nightcrawler says, unperturbed, can't do that. I wouldn't have done this if there had been any other way. And he explains, "You're a witch, Amanda. The X-Men have desperate need of your unique talents. I'll explain en route." So then we go back to Eagle Plaza, and the X-Men are not doing too well against the shadow beings here. So Nightcrawler teleports down from the Blackbird with Amanda, and then we get a look at her new costume here as she uses her sorceress powers against the shadow beings. Her spells stab into the core of the shadow mass, partially disrupting it and allowing some of the X-Men to struggle free. So that's Colossus and Storm. Rogue isn't doing so well though, and she transforms into a dire wraith that attacks Colossus and sends out this barbed tongue that's designed to burrow into his organic steel, right into his brain. So Colossus is faced with a moral dilemma here. Should he do nothing and die, or should he kill her? And just then, and this is surprising, this is a real unexpected turn of events, there arrives none other than Illyana Rasputin, Colossus's little sister, and she arrives with her soul sword as magic. And she uses it against the shadow being that was attacking Colossus, and manages to free then Rogue from its grip, as well as Storm here. So that's interesting. And so Illyana and Amanda join forces against this amalgamated shadow being, and we have this great piece of work here by Tom Orzechowski, where the panel border is a sound effect, roar. That's very cool. He does that really well throughout his run on Uncanny X-Men when there's an opportunity. And both John Romita Jr. and Silvestri give him those opportunities during the run. So Illyana tries to attack the masked creature when it's held in this spell net by Amanda, and she's repulsed into the wall. So they're in big trouble here, and Storm tells Nightcrawler, the roof Nightcrawler, teleport up there now. But why, Amanda? I won't leave her. But Forge is back, and he's got a new prosthetic leg there, you can see, and tells Nightcrawler to do it and take him with them. So they arrive up on the roof, and remember from the previous issue, Storm had a run-in on the roof with a dire wraith that she left there and assumed that it had frozen to death, but it was still alive, and it was using its sorcery to aid its allies down below, which was why Amanda and Illyana couldn't beat them. And so Forge here is asked by Nightcrawler, what's he going to do? "Don't ask foolish questions, X-Man," is Forge's grim reply, and he blasts that dire wraith away. So then we go down to the team below. The dire wraiths and the shadow beings have all disappeared, and so now it's a case of cleaning up. Forge himself says, as Nightcrawler ports him down, that this place is it'll be a while before this place is livable. Nightcrawler says, "At least you're around to fix it, mein Herr. Something bothering you, mister?" asks Forge. "Consider me squeamish. Killing does not come as naturally to me as to others. Excuse me, please, I must see to my friends." So Nightcrawler's been mulling things over, and will continue to do so throughout the issue. Here's the first time that Colossus realizes that Illyana has these sorceress's powers. And he says, "I knew you had changed in limbo, Illyana, when you were Belasco's captive, but I never realized quite how much." And she tells him, "I was more than the Demon Lord's captive, Peter. I became his apprentice. Whatever you were, you are, you will forever remain, my sister," he says as they hug. And then Forge goes after Naze. "I should have guessed. What did you do, old man? Try to summon the Great Spirit himself? Why did I ever build this bloody sanctum in the first place?" And that's what we've been wondering since we discovered its existence in the previous issue, because he's forsworn his mystical magical abilities and has devoted himself solely to science. So he says here, "Why did I ever build this bloody sanctum in the first place? Didn't I learn my lesson in Nam? No more magic ever." So that's hints there about Forge's origin story, and we won't get the full background on that until, again, the Fall of the Mutants storyline. So Storm arrives up. How is he? And Forge says alive, barely. And she says, I wish him well. We shall be gone when you return. So Forge protests. I won't let things end like this between us, but Storm is adamant. She says, do not follow Forge. Do not try to find us. Suggest to your federal associates that they do the same. Cheer up, warrior. Our story is far from ended. We shall meet again. And then he asks, you may well wish we had not, because Storm thinks of Forge now as a liar and knows that he's the one responsible for building the weapon that took away her mutant powers. And we won't see Forge again for 2.5 years until issue 220. And he will be in bad shape at that point when we catch up with him again. And now we've got an interlude, the Bermuda Triangle, and someone we haven't seen in a while in the comic as well, and that is Lee Forrester. And she spots someone out in the ocean being attacked by a great white shark, and she dives in to save the person, and manages even to boot the great white in the nose and take this figure away. And of course, like long-time readers can recognize the elements of the glove and boots on this character, the color scheme, the red and the purple. Her shipmate pulls the almost drowned figure on board the ship, and who does it turn out to be? Except for Magneto. And this picks up from events in New Mutants number 21, where Magneto was blown out of Asteroid M by Warlock. And this is where he ended up, like splashing down in the Caribbean, but picked up now by Lee Forrester. So then the scene switches to Westchester and the X-Mansion, and we have Storm here going for a midnight swim, watched in silhouette there by Nightcrawler. I really like this panel of him up atop the diving board, and he's there with a towel ready for Storm when she comes out of the water to dry off, because of course she doesn't have her command of the weather, by which she would have dried herself off in the past. And she confirms that, Nightcrawler says to her, the professor says your powers are completely gone. And she confirms, as if they'd never been, the genetic potential exists. My children or theirs may someday command the weather as I did, but not I. And she's made peace with it. She says, this is not the end of the world, my darling Alf, or even of mine. I'm a grown woman. I've survived. I will survive. Now, Nightcrawler here has some serious business. He's asked to call a special meeting of the X-Men. And Storm here seems to be indicating that she thinks she's no longer going to be part of the X-Men. I'm no longer a mutant. There is no longer any place for me here. Nightcrawler says, perhaps not for any of us. Do it as a favor to me then. I need you by my side this last time more than ever. So then we get to the meeting. And it's an interesting one. We've got Rachel on the stairs outside listening. And also Ileana and Roberto as well. Sunspot of the New Mutants. And the professor realizes that they're out on the stairs listening to the meeting, and he tells them that it's past their bedtime to go to bed. But Rachel uses her psionic powers to mask herself and remain on the stairs. And then we catch up with the meeting inside that Nightcrawler's called. This is a great panel here. Great use of silhouette on the characters, and also Glynis wine with the colours emerging from the lighted fire. And the body language of the characters. Peter standing stoically there. The professor with his hands behind his back. Storm resting against the side of the table there, and Nightcrawler up atop the mantle over the fire, and Rogue sitting in the chair. It's nicely composed, really. And also look at this detail of even this little shadow cast that Glynis Wine is colouring in here from Nightcrawler. A lot of work in just a simple panel like that. And then we've got a simple 6-panel page where Nightcrawler gets down to it. So he talks about how we live in the last quarter of the 20th century in an age where men have walked on the moon, and some of us journeyed to the stars. We've split the atom, the secrets of space and time are ours for the asking. Yet when you found me, he says to the professor, Not so many years ago, I was being hunted by a mob who wanted to drive a stake through my heart because they believed I was a demon. I hoped joining the X-Men would make a difference, that things would get better for mutant kind. Instead, they've gotten worse. We are still hated, still hounded by the very people we've sworn to protect. So I find myself asking why? What's the point? So a moral existential crisis here. And the professor says, would you rather follow Magneto's way by conquering the world and enslaving humanity? And Nightcrawler responds, in truth, I'd rather not be bothered at all. And that's interesting. He says, if the world cares nothing for mutants, fine. The feeling's mutual. Storm's just listening there. Great body language. What of the X-Men? Asked the professor. What of us? Forgive me, but who needs us? What purpose do we serve? The school, yes, that fulfills a desperate need. Young mutants must be taught the use of their powers. But as for the rest, let the Avengers or the Fantastic Four handle that burden. They're popular. They're accepted. Leave us, then, to live in peace. And the professor responds, do you really think running away is the answer? And so Nightcrawler starts to get a bit emotional here. He says, at least I'll be living for myself and the woman I love instead of some amorphous dream. Does that sound selfish? Well, I feel I've earned it. I earned the right. We all have. Look at us, Professor. Of the X-Men you gathered, Banshee and Storm maimed. Thunderbird killed. Jean Grey killed. Where will it end? And so what are we going to see on the next page? Just a continuation of the discussion? No. Rachel's been listening on the stairs. Jean Grey killed, she thinks, and then she shouts. And this is a great panel again. Romita Jr. teaming up with Orzechowski on the lettering here, and the panel border being the shouted no. It's a psionic no. And she bursts into the room, hitting everyone with her psi bolts, including and especially Nightcrawler. And the professor pulls her back and says to her telepathically, Rachel, stop this. Get a hold of yourself. You're killing him. So she drops Nightcrawler. And now we're going to get some backstory on Rachel because we've been missing it. So Nightcrawler's okay. And then Rachel starts to say, you can't give up. The X-Men are important, not because you're superheroes, but because you're mutant superheroes. And she continues here, you people think you got it rough? Give me a break. You got no idea. Take a look at the world I come from. The future that may yet lie in wait for us. All if we don't do anything. While there's still time and hope. So here we go. She opens her mind to them, revealing a lovely summer morning and the murder of Kurt and Amanda, who are married, as they take a 14-year-old Ileana Rasputin to the school bus stop. And then the mansion itself exploding under the assault of an artillery barrage. And then Rachel calling up to the professor, who shot through the window as he tells her to get down to the danger room for safety. And then we learn that she's the only one that survived that day. And she was sent to a concentration camp for mutants in the Bronx. And we get like events that we've seen in Days of Future Past, Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142, the death of Wolverine there by Sentinel, Storm dying, Colossus. We've got that little note from Innocenti. The rest of us in the future weren't so lucky. When Kate's mind returned to her body, only I was left to welcome her. So, a question that was left over from the end of Uncanny X-Men 142 was the future changed? And Rachel's timeline, it wasn't changed. And so here we have the X-Men. Now remember, they've been mind-linked to her, and so they've gotten details of their own futures. So Peter realizes that he and Kitty were married and wonders whether there's still a shot for them, having just broken up recently. And Nightcrawler thinks, with respect, Rachel, you've proved my case. What do I owe a world that is willing, eager to slaughter me and everyone I love simply because we exist? Interesting thought from him. And then Rogue there, worried about how it was Mystique's fault. My foster mom was the mutant who murdered Kelly. And nothing from Storm. And that's really interesting. She's got a look of intense focus on her face, but has nothing to say. And then poor Professor X thinks all his hopes, all his dreams, gone. But he's not sorry for himself. He's sorry for the future turned to ashes and crying there. An interesting technique here for the shading of his face by Dan Green. We will see in the future the pair of them, Romita Jr. and Dan Green, perfect that on Romita Jr.'s second run on Uncanny X-Men. So Rachel continues with her speech. She says, "Finally, there was just me." Okay, so how is she back in 1984? I figured, what the heck, nothing to lose. Maybe I could time slip myself back a decade or two, only physically instead of psychically like I did Kate, and tried to prevent that future from coming to pass. I got to when I wanted to go, but not quite where. Because this isn't the past I remember. My Ileana should be a kid, not a teenager. My Storm never cut her hair or lost her powers, my mom. A lot here is different, but a lot is the same. And some of it is worse. There were those among us who wanted only vengeance. They wanted the scales balanced in fire and blood, life for life. But the X-Men stood for something better. They never lost hope, no matter what. Because of them, Professor Xavier's dream of a world where normal and mutant could live in peace and fellowship, where there wouldn't be any distinction between them. We'd all just be human, never died. So that's quite the statement for the meaning and value of Professor X's original dream, and why, no matter how grim and dark things become for the X-Men, they shouldn't give up on that dream. Rachel's seen the worst possible future that there could be, and she still believes in the dream. So her speech works. She brings Nightcrawler around, and Storm helps. And Nightcrawler wanted Storm there, and she says to him, "What is that classic saying you're fond of quoting, Kurt? With great power comes great responsibility." So interesting that. Did he learn it from Spider-Man or what? Or is it just kind of like a little bit of an in-joke by Claremont? Want it or not, like it or not, with great power comes great responsibility. Not just the superheroes are important, but also mutant superheroes. Very well, Professor, for the dream, he says as he holds out his hand. And then we get a big group hug. "Thank you, my son, with all my heart." It's interesting. Looks good. That's a great panel by Romita Jr. Look at the size of Colossus here. Huge. Rachel's separate from them, standing apart from them. But she's gotten them to bond together again, just at a point that they might have split. Interesting. And then we get an epilogue, and again, look at the lettering here by Orzechowski, nicely done. And so we're at a dockside where we have this fish that's come off ships being loaded into trucks to go off to the restaurants in Manhattan. And one of the guys here, Jaime Rodriguez, sees amongst a crate of fish that falls to the ground something sparkling. So he cuts open the fish and he thinks, "Holy Mary, Jaime Rodriguez, you just hit the jackpot." And then this amulet speaks, "Hearken, O man, I am power, don me, obey me, and the world is yours." So that's an interesting invitation. And that is a setup for issue 190. So, letters here answered by Nightcrawler. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 188. If you did, please like the video in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned for more content like this.